My precious. Isn't this one sexy beast that you want to do terrible things to? This is the Thompson Center Performance Center Long Range Rifle, or TCPC LRR in 308. Yum! What's up, everybody, and thanks for joining episode 3 of the Slav Guns Precision Rifle Series. No, not the Precision Rifle Series known as PRS, but our series on precision rifles. So far, we've discussed the why and have looked at 2 optics, including this Leupold Mark V HD. In this video, we're going to be looking at our first gun, the Thompson Center Performance Center Long Range Rifle, or LRR, chambered in .308 Winchester. So, the name, Thompson Center Performance Center. The gun is a joint product between Thompson Center and Smith & Wesson's Performance Center. Both companies are under the American Outdoor Brands umbrella, and this is an official collaboration. I've been a fan of the Performance Center for a long time now, and I was quite excited to hear that this is going to be a collaboration on the Thompson Center firearm. So, this is a brand new gun, launched about a year ago, and represents American Outdoors Brand's entry into the growing precision rifle segment. As you may or may not know, pretty much across the board, the gun industry is in the midst of what's now being called the Trump slump. Almost universally, gun sales are down from the Obama years across all handguns, rifles, and shotguns. One section that's standing out is the precision rifles used for extended long-range shooting. Thanks to the rising popularity of the PRS, the NRL, and the countless YouTubers deciding to dirty up the planet by creating waste, shooting at milk jugs at a mile away, manufacturers have flooded the market with purpose-built guns for that type of shooting. No longer do you need to spend $5,000, wait 12 months for a rifle builder to build you a gun capable of shooting 1 mile with decent accuracy. Thanks to quality match ammunition, precision engineering, and new SAMI-spec ammo such as 6.5 Creedmoor, PRC, 224 Valkyrie, and 300 PRC, you can pick up a factory gun and do it yourself. The Thompson Center LRR is what's considered a chassis gun. Rather than having a barreled action mounted to a wood or polymer stock, you have the barrel and receiver mounted to a purpose-built aluminum chassis. This eliminates a lot of the flex associated with wood, and as such, why you do not need to have the action bedded. By design, the barrel is free-floated, further needed for accuracy. The appeal here is that instead of buying a gun and then going out to replace the stock or buying another chassis, you can go out and buy this gun ready to go without paying for parts you're going to be throwing away anyway. The gun is available in 3 caliber choices, .243 Winchester, .308 Winchester, and 6.5 Creedmoor. I chose the gun in .308 for a specific purpose, and we'll discuss this later. If I was getting into the precision long game shooting world right now, it would be very tough not to recommend 6.5 and just skip the .308 altogether. After 10 years, it's time to say 6.5 is not a fad, and the cartridge provides real benefits. As we discussed in our Leupold video, you're going to be shooting long range with an optic. You need to have enough elevation and adjustment in the scope. The further out you go, particularly with optics with 30mm or 1-inch tubes, you're very quickly going to run out of internal adjustment. The Thompson Center LRR comes with a 20 MOA base that's already included. For shooters with milliradian optics, this means an additional 6 mils of adjustment. Now, MOA versus mil, it's purely a difference of metric versus American. Whichever system you go with, just make sure that the reticle aligns with the turret systems. You don't want to have mil reticle and MOA adjustment. What's nice with this chassis system is that you have both an adjustment for the cheek weld and the length of pull. What the big deal is that you can adjust the length of pull with the turn of a knob instead of using spacers. The buttstock also adjusts both for height and side to side. Moving on to the grip, this chassis uses an AR pistol grip, so you can use whichever one that you would like to use. The chassis uses the very common AICS pattern magazines, and the gun comes with one 10-round magazine made by Accurate Mag. I have also tried the MDT magazines from the Howa, and they worked in this gun as well. The one advantage of the Accurate Mag that comes with the gun, especially for reloaders, is that it lets you load fairly long. This is a personal preference. Some people like to load to SAMI specs, others like to load long, and sometimes it does increase the accuracy that you're going to get from the gun. The forend is vented nicely with M-LOK rails and 5 positions, side to side, bottom, and in the middle at 45 degrees. The gun also comes with a Caldwell bipod. It's not the greatest bipod, but it does the job. You can easily replace it with the bipod of your choice, or you can remove it if you're going to be shooting it off of a rest. The chassis is going to come in 2 colors, in flat dark earth, such as what you see here, and in black. It's totally a personal preference. For me, I kind of like the flat dark earth, even though I'm not an FDE type guy, but it's a personal preference. Moving on, the TC LRR uses a push feed action, and I was quite pleasantly surprised by how smooth it is. And it didn't even have that much lubrication. With the bolt extended, as you can see, there's very minimal slop, side to side and up and down, and you'll have no issues closing the bolt. The one-piece bolt handle is actually quite nice. Now, while it doesn't have a lot of dimpling in between, it does have these fairly big grooves, and you should have no issues grabbing it with wet hands or whatnot. The challenge that it presents, however, is that if you don't like this bolt handle, because it's one piece and it doesn't just unscrew, you would have a few more issues replacing it, or at least I haven't tried. Okay. The gun has a 2-position safety. When it's pulled back, the bolt is closed, the trigger is locked, so you're not going to be able to fire it. You can, however, open and manipulate the bolt. If you push it forward, you'll see a little red button there. That shows you that the gun is ready to fire, and you can pull it. To open the bolt and remove it, there's a button on the side that you just press in with the bolt extended, and you can pull it out. As you can see, this creates an issue that you either have to undo, there's a bolt here on this side, you can remove it, and then you'll be able to take the bolt out. But what I found easiest is just raise this to the highest position. You can pull it out, push the button, and you can pull the bolt out. To put it in, drop it in, and you're good to go. Drop that in. Just align this. There we go. Just align that and you're good to go. You can adjust it to whatever you want it to do. All right, so we had to have a change of scenery. I was starting to film the beginning part of this episode while we were at the range, and then it was already getting a little bit later in the afternoon. One of the members of the club came by. We started chat, and you know exactly how that's gonna go. And before you know it, the sun was already down and it was getting too late to film the rest of it. So we're gonna do that today, starting with the trigger. So the trigger on this gun, it's a very nice performance center trigger. It's precisely what you would expect out of a performance center gun. This trigger is going to be user adjustable from 2.5 to 3.5 pounds, and I think it might actually be a little bit lower. Now, while it's not a 2-ounce jewel trigger that you're going to find in many bench rest guns, it is very nice in the grand scheme of things for what you're going to find in the chassis guns, and most definitely most of the hunting rifles that you're going to have out there. In a sense, it's a 2-stage trigger because you're going to have the blade. So I'm considering pushing in the blade 1 stage and then the rest of the pressure to break the trigger. So 2-stage. And okay, weight-wise, it is very nice, so it doesn't take too much effort. On my gun, I measured it. It's exactly 10 ounces of pressure required to put in the blade. And then once you put the blade in, it's a very clean wall, and the trigger is going to break it. On this gun, 2 pounds, 5 ounces. That's what the 5 trigger average was. So that's that. Moving on, the barrel. The Thompson Center LRR comes with barrels in 3 different lengths, depending on the caliber that you choose. The 308 I have here comes with a 20-inch fluted barrel. The 6.5 Creedmoor comes with a 24-inch barrel. And the 243 comes with a 26-inch barrel. The 308 comes with a 1 and 12-inch twist rate, so that's perfect for stabilizing 168 to 175 grain bullets. But if you plan on shooting 180 grain or higher, this gun may not stabilize them properly. So stick with 168s to 175s. The 6.5 Creedmoor is a 1 and 8-inch twist, and the 243 is a 1 and 10. All the barrels are fluted, so that's going to help with both cooling and rigidity, and is cut with the 5R rifling. The 5R rifling is now becoming more common, and what separates it is that the edges of the rifling do not cut into the bullet and disform it. So you might have a little bit more stability and perhaps a bit less fouling. The guns do come with a muzzle brake. However, you can remove it and replace it with another brake or a suppressor. I found the brake to be quite effective, especially when shooting this gun back to back with other guns without the brakes. So those are the features of the Thompson Center LRR. So why should you consider this gun? If you're looking for a complete chassis type gun, which gives you pretty much everything you would need to get started, this is a great choice. You have a very nice chassis with a plethora of adjustments, the capacity to mount all of the accessories that you want, the ability to accept commonly found magazines, and it comes with a very nice trigger and is accurate. In fact, much like Howa started some time ago, Thompson Center gives you an accuracy guarantee that the gun will shoot a 1-inch, 3-shot group at 100 yards with premium factory ammunition. Does it? Yeah, it does. And of course, you have the lifetime guarantee for the lifetime of the original owner. The gun is priced very reasonably with an MSRP of $1,211 and a street price of about $1,000, and that's a nice value proposition. So let's take a look at how it shoots, and then I'll give you my first impressions. What's up, everybody? This is take 2 on the Thompson Center LRR. I was here about a week and a half ago, both with the Thompson Center and with the Howa. And with the Howa, it turned out okay. Wasn't a fan of the scope, and I'm sure you probably already saw the last video about the Sightmark Citadel. And with the Thompson Center, I have great glass on here. So this is the Leupold Mark V, 5-25. And put it on this rifle, but of course had issues, and I'll talk about that in a little bit later. But have all the tools that I might need, and so what I did was kind of bore sighted it. So we should be on paper, and I set up a fairly big target out at 100. So we'll take a look at kind of like where it is and go from there. The goal for today is we want to sight the gun in. I have a chrono, so we're going to test various loads that I have developed. I have 10 rounds of each, increments of 5/10 of a grain. And so the goal for today is going to be to sight in the gun. It's going to be to test some reloads, and also to see how the gun performs with Hornady Match ammo. And we'll get it going and go from there. All right, so let's start. All right, so let's take a look at some of the results. In the top left square, we have an 8-shot group of the Hornady Match 308 168 grain ELD bullets. Why 8-shot? Because I forgot to stop shooting at 5 after noticing some concerning results with the chrono. I had it too close, so the first few rounds were reading quite low. As you can see, the 8-shot group is at about 1.1 inches, but I vividly recall the first 4 shots were that lower bunch. In either case, quite good. The ammo was a tad hot in the gun, as you will see in the next picture, and they were averaging in that 26-30 feet per second out of the 20-inch barrel. Moving on, you can see that the squares each shot with a 5-shot group with the second batch of hand loads. I decided to use one of the powders I had luck with in the past, the IMR 8208 XBR. It's an Australian powder imported by IMR and is very temperature stable, and once dialed in, quite good with low spreads and deviations. The bullet is a regular Hornady 168 grain match hollow point bow tail, not the ELD with the me-plat. I started with the 5-shot groups in half-grain increments, topping off at the 43 grains, which was the max listed for this powder in the Hodgdon manual. As we can see, all of the groups were good, with some really good, especially when we considered that the brass was random twice or 3 times fired. I did not sort it by weight or by head stamp, which I should have. 41.5 grains, which is the top square, G4, there was a 4-shot group of .405, with the flyer making it a .835-inch group. Looking at the chrono result, the flyer had a velocity of 2549, which was about 60 feet per second faster than the rest of the group. I'm fairly positive that this was due to using a different piece of brass that had less volume, thus more pressure, and thus higher velocity. The 42 grain group also shot fairly well with a .722-inch 5-shot group. The 42.5 grain group started opening up. The 43 grain group started opening up, but this was after the point where I also discovered that the scope base was becoming loose and wobbling. On my third range day, when I started filming this video, I did go back and do a ladder test with both this powder and H4895. For that third trip, I also did go down the rabbit hole and use the same once-fired brass that was sorted by weight and neck-sized only. While I was not impressed with H4895, 8208 showed a lot of potential. The ladder test was done in .3 grain increments and did show an accuracy node in the 41.5 grain area for 8208, so I'll go back to it and load up 10 to 20 rounds in that area on either side of that. There's also another accuracy node in the 42.5 grain area, so we'll look there again. I do think that between inconsistent brass and the scope base wobbling, it opened up the group more than the gun was capable of. In either case, the gun can shoot. First impressions. If you notice something from the shooting footage, it might have been that it was from multiple shooting days. While I would love to say it was because I wanted to shoot a lot before giving you my first impressions, it wasn't. Rather, it's because I had to. The first 2 trips to the range, they were a bust. About a month ago, I came out to the range with both the Howa and the Thompson Center LRR, and I started with the Howa with the Sightmark scope and the loophole on this LRR. And with the Howa, the gun shot great, but the scope held me back. With this gun, I honestly thought I was going crazy. After a few boxes of trying to sight in the gun and questioning my ability as a hand loader, I realized that the two bolts holding the action to the chassis were loose. As it was getting late in the day and I had another gun to shoot, I just called it a day. The second day I came out, after tightening the action screws, the gun was shooting lights out, and I was able to achieve the groups that I was looking for, and I got plenty of chrono data. So that was terrific, and I shot with both hand loads and factory Hornady ammo. After a while though, I noticed that the group started opening up a bit, and no, it wasn't the chassis bolts, rather this time it was the bolts holding the scope base to the barreled action. And after checking them, I saw that they were getting a bit loose. The third day at the range, which was when I started filming this video, I was there to see if I can actually recreate the groups from the factory ammo and to run a ladder test of my loads, and we'll discuss that in a future video. In short, the gun runs and it shoots really well. It's an interesting discussion, and I do want to hear what you think about it, so let me know in the comments below. On one hand, I'm 99% confident that if I was buying this gun used, I would have checked every single bolt on the gun to make sure that it was tightened to factory spec. And in fact, that's precisely what I did when I was mounting the scope. I was checking the base screws to make sure they were tightened, but I just didn't check those. With a new gun, it just honestly never crossed my mind that it would be shipped with a couple of bolts loose. If I wasn't an experienced gun owner, I can certainly see how this gun would end up going back to the FFL and be like, hey, what the hell, the gun just doesn't shoot. And I honestly can't remember buying a new gun where having something loose was normal, or it even actually happened. So, moral of the story, if you're buying this gun, or heck, if you're buying any gun, new or used, verify that every bolt is torqued to spec. In fact, after this video, go check on all your guns. All right, so the good, and there's lots of it. So far, I've shot about 200 rounds for the gun, and it's quite accurate, and it's certainly capable of sub MOA accuracy, especially with just factory ammo. The fit and finish on the chassis is quite nice, and I think the gun looks awesome, especially in flat dark earth. And what's funny is the day that I started filming this, I was at the range and there's another gentleman with a Thompson Center LRR, but his was in 6.5 Creedmoor and it was in black, and he was raving about how he wanted it in flat dark earth. I'm not a huge fan of flat dark earth, but I think it works great for this gun. Okay. I'm also a big fan in the amount of fitting that can be done with the chassis, particularly with the buttstock. It's almost infinitely adjustable. And I quite like the pistol grip here. It is a Hogue, it has some fairly nice stippling, and it's fairly upright. If you want, you can change it to any AR pistol grip yourself, and I'm going to play around with a few that I had an idea for, and we'll talk about that in a future video. Now, one thing that's going to be definitely appreciated by shooters, particularly on this 308, is going to be the muzzle brake. Shooting a couple of guns back to back with the brake and without, you quickly realize just how effective that brake is, and your shoulder is going to thank you for it. And of course, I'm a big fan of the trigger. Now, generally, I'm not a huge fan of a trigger blade inside the trigger, but it doesn't bother me too much here. The trigger, it's clean and it's light, and it's perfect for an off-the-shelf gun. And of course, there are going to be a couple of things that I'm not a fan of. First, as we discussed, the gun came shipped with the 2 action screws that were loose, and the scope base screws were also fairly loose, or at least they weren't Loctited in place, I don't think. Obviously, both of these they're not design issues, it's just possibly oversight, or maybe the gun was built on a Monday morning or a late Friday afternoon. In either case, both of those are resolved and it's not going to be an issue. The two things that you might have an issue with, and the first one is going to be a personal choice. The mags here, they're not drop free. In fact, it takes a little bit of effort to try to pull the magazine out. Obviously, it's personal preference between whether you like AR mags that are going to be able to flick open. And there are people who are going to be on both sides of the debate. Personally, I prefer for the mags to drop free a little bit more freely. And there are going to be people that are going to be like, hey, I want it to be fairly tight in there, and I don't want there to be any wobble whatsoever. And so it's definitely not a win-win situation. The one thing I would basically say is, and I did have issues with it, when I was putting it in, it does take a bit of force to get it in there to make sure it's, there we go, perfect example, to make sure that it's in there and locked in place. Otherwise, you might have a few feeding issues where you're running the bolt and it's not picking up the round. And that did happen with me a couple of times, and that's precisely what it is. The only other issue that I personally have with the gun is that it drew blood on me. So as you can see, you have the safety here, and I am a huge fan of it's functional and it feels really good, as opposed to I felt a couple of safeties on other guns and it almost like feels a little flimsy. On this one, it feels nice and solid. The issue I have with it, it's like it's so freaking big that while I was operating the bolt, I think I was like going something like that, bam, and I caught my thumb on the safety and started bleeding. So I do wish perhaps it was smaller or probably even rounded. I think that would eliminate the issues. Or the other way you can kind of save it is, well, if the bolt handle was longer, you wouldn't have an issue with it. Overall, I think with this gun, you're getting a terrific package that's going to get you everything that you need in order to get started at around $1,000. You're going to get a very nice chassis system. You're getting a nice, accurate gun that's capable of sub MOA with factory match ammo. Go pick up a box of Hornady Match and you'll be able to shoot 1-inch groups out there, not a problem. If you hand load, you're going to be able to cut that down even less. You're getting that in this gun. With it, I mean, for that same $1,000, you're getting a very nice made, accurate mag. That's about $80 by itself. You're getting a Caldwell bipod. It's functional. Look, it's not going to be the best bipod out there. It's not going to have the infinite adjustability, but it's a very nice bipod for what it is and for the package deal that you're getting. You're also getting a very nice case that the gun comes with, and I'll include a picture of it there. And it's going to be a very nice bag for what it is, and the gun comes shipped with it. So it's going to save you an additional $80 to $100 that you'd be spending on a bag such as that. So all in all, it's a great value, and I would have absolutely zero issues recommending this gun to anybody who wants to get started in that game. With that accuracy guarantee and with that lifetime warranty, it's a terrific, terrific deal, and I look forward to shooting this gun a little bit more. In our next video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a look at how much more accuracy we can squeeze out of this gun when we're switching from factory to match ammunition and then to hand loads. And I've already started shooting it, and we'll talk about the process of how I'm using to develop the load for this gun. And then like I said, what's going to be interesting, and the reason why I chose .308 is because unlike the new modern calibers such as 6.5 Creedmoor, 6.5 PRC, 224 Valk, that are SAMI spec'd to have small tolerances, here it's a .308 round. So it's an older round. You do have more room to play with. So that's what I want to see, exactly how much we can improve on it. So that's the Thompson Center LRR in .308 Winchester. I hope you enjoy this video. If you like it, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and do share it with your friends. And as always, if you do want to support the channel beyond that, always grateful to have new patrons on Patreon, and you can find us on patreon.com/SlavGuns. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. I need to slow it down even more. Oh. I built this bench for daughters, but it is nice to use, but it's tough to get out of. It's kit size. Birds, shut up. I'm trying to film here.